Welcome to Psycho-Pass episode 2. We actually got some more translations this week. This one is by Horrendous Subs. I'm 100% sure this is going to be picked up by Netflix now because there are 45-minute episodes, which make it perfect for Netflix consumption. And the plot is so dense and thick and juicy. It's so nice. So we're having another 45-minute episode. I'm sorry because the video is going to be so long. Last week it was 25 minutes long. I'll try to keep it shorter than that this week. But without further ado, here's Psycho-Pass episode 2. Okay, that's a cool thing that I want to comment on. So, there's a book, I don't know what it's called. It's about this kid who gets pulled into this magical world type thing. It's like a fantasy land built for children, and the only way you can kill people in that is by accident. You can't really kill someone on purpose. It doesn't work that way. So they explained how in the wars, they would just blindfold both sides soldiers and they would just swing at each other, and you can't hit someone on purpose when you're blindfolded, so they just kill each other all on accident. And that seems to be the case here. Is if you knowingly murder someone, it's going to corrupt your hue, so you have to make it look like an accident, but you can't even intentionally make it look like an accident. You just have to stay mindfully ignorant of what exactly it is you're doing, and that seems to be what they're picking up on. It's interesting that they're choosing to go in this manner because I talked about white-collar crime in the first episode of this and how that's something that you can't really tackle in regards to hue, because you're not really hurting anyone, quote-unquote, when you do white-collar crime, even though it eventually does lead to people going bankrupt, killing themselves, or like having drastically reduced quality of life, or doing something desperate because they don't have any choice anymore. But I feel it's also cool that they're choosing to tackle it this way, because they're talking about ways that you can circumvent the system rather than just being like a psychopath, which is what they talked about in the first season with Makishima Shogo. He was criminally like unclassifiable, but in this there are people willfully circumnavigating the system, or circumventing the system rather, and to me that's more interesting.
9世紀の金融システムを模倣した国家規模の詐欺だ。
Ooh, everything they say in this show just makes me more and more interested. So this is more about white-collar crime. Sometimes it's not one individual who psychopaths could get clouded because they're doing something wrong. Sometimes the whole system is just pointed towards something completely unsustainable, or something that's immoral or evil sometimes, so that even when people are acting in the best interest of just their corporation without any ill will, it can still lead to adverse measures or adverse circumstances. In this case, the people inside this organization were just doing stuff that they would normally do. If you ever heard of the banality of evil, it's a concept coined by Hannah Arendt when she saw like how kind of normal the people who did all the horrors in the Nazi like Holocaust were when they were put on trial, and she coined the term banality of evil to describe the people that are not willingly self-aware of their own evil. They just kind of follow orders in a system that's not in everyone's best interest, and it ends up being that's the most evil system. So they're touching on that in this season of Psycho-Pass. Wow, okay.
Subprime?
Oh, Japan, with your 0% interest rates, your negative interest rates. Oh, every loan is subprime these days. If you go to the bank with your income, no matter what it is, chances are you're not going to be getting the prime rate, which is the best rate that you can get from a bank, which then in turn borrows money from the Federal Reserve or whatever it is, which is a lower interest rate. And the difference between those two is how they make their money. Or it could be their own money that other people have deposited with them, because investment banks and the savings banks and stuff, it's all combined these days. Everything's very confusing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But the point is, subprime means it's just another way to rip you off. 13% interest rates, people. If you take even a small loan out here in North America, things are effed up big time. They're talking about 2 and 4% interest rates. I'd take that any day, Japan.
銀行は多数の住宅ローンをまとめて金融商品にした。
Yo, they're explaining the financial crisis. This is the financial crisis. Go watch The Big Short. There's literally Margot Robbie explains this from a bathtub. And in this case, anime is telling us how the financial crisis of 2008 happened. Okay, anime.
なんで金持ちと貧乏人のローンが同じ評価なんだ?
This is great. This is great. Don't even have to watch The Big Short. Just watch Psycho-Pass Season 3. Spread the word, people. Financial systems are rigged.
貯金も家も仕事も失い、世界経済は大打撃を受けた。
What they also fail to mention is that when you take a subprime loan, most of them are adjustable rates, which means you pay relatively low rates in the first couple of years and then adjust according to the market. So what happened was people took out a really what they thought was an affordable loan because they were paying 2, 3, 4, 5% interest, and then when it hit the adjustable section, it went up to like 15%. So their mortgage payment like tripled from what it was before, and they couldn't afford it. Obviously, their income didn't inflate at all. And they defaulted on their loans, their homes got foreclosed, but there's another side of the story where after their homes got foreclosed, the people that made them those loans in the first place went back and bought their homes at a rock bottom price, so they get paid on both ends. And then of course you have to do some kind of debt consolidation, everything else to pay off the remainder of what your house is worth versus the loan that you took, because property values fell in those areas where a lot of homes were foreclosed because no one wants to live in a place where a bunch of homes are foreclosed. The world is really messed up. Thanks for reminding me, Psycho-Pass.
120% 違法よ。
ただ操作は難しいです。
The best part is none of it was illegal. That's the best part. Because the banks were allowed to make those securities, because the credit rating systems were never accused of falsely rating those securities, which made people falsely believe in them, none of it was illegal. No bankers went to jail. 2 banks closed after the entire world economy fell off a cliff for 10 years. Wasn't expecting to think about this today, but Psycho-Pass, you got me.
住所を送った。そこに行け。あとはそいつらが動いてくれる。
He's setting this dude up. Like, this is textbook setup. He just said, there's no record of me being involved in this. I could just let you be the scapegoat. You take all the blame, and I'm just going to escape with all this money. That's way preferable to, like, having to take care of your mental state, right? He's probably going to set him up. Not only is he an extreme empath, he's also a parkour expert. What more could you ask for in a superior officer, am I right? If someone's pointing a gun at you and the gun just spoke out loud and told him to kill you, the first thing you said should not be something racist. You should probably be begging for your life. Be like, I'm gonna change, put me somewhere else. I won't do the things I've been doing for the past 30 years. But of course he doesn't do that, and he's gonna get exploded again gratuitously. I knew it. Okay. Isn't this the guy from season 1? Like, he has the same face, but I forget his name. There's so many names in all these shows. So he works for the Foreign Affairs Department now? Okay, I see you. I see you. The only problem I have with the show is that it's visually so flat. Like, look at this shot. It's in this interior bright lit place. What they could have done when they knocked out the hollow in the plane is that the lights could have turned like red or dramatic to kind of go along with what's happening, but instead they choose to keep this like flatly lit shot. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but a lot of the visuals in this anime, in this show in particular, are subpar to me. The 3D backgrounds I've already specified, like I've already gone very in depth on how kind of boring the 3D backgrounds are, how they're all just like matte. There was this in the shot in this episode where the guy Yonehara is crying into a rug, but the rug is CG, so you can just see the end of it as like this flat, perfectly straight square with no texture. And that just, it completely ruins it. If you have all these 2D characters and they're just standing in like a 3D world that's just been like drag and dropped out of some asset collection. I'm not saying that everything is that, but that rug definitely came from some asset pack somewhere because it was so bad. Okay, continue.
リックさんの愛情を感じる。はい。
You have to get a Japanese name to live in Japan? It's kind of messed up. Here in Canada, when you enter, you can enter your legal name. You can give a preferred name that the government call you by. So, for example, a lot of Chinese immigrants, when they come, just because their names are so different from what people are used to in the West, they add like a different first name or like an anglicized first name, and that's the name that they use in like daily communication, and also conveniently it's also the name that you can get on your ID and everything. But this, I mean, I guess it's a similar system in Japan, but you're not forced to do that. Like, I didn't do that when I came to Canada. It's interesting to see that in Japan you apparently have to get a Japanese name, otherwise it would be weird for them to put it on IDs and stuff, I guess. But couldn't they just write out like a fake kanji for your name or whatever? I don't know, it seems a little weird.
その時、人は何を信じるのだろうか。
You crazy Akane. Don't tell me you're gonna tell the people about the brains in the jars. That's just a bad idea. Oof. Society would fall apart if you found out that you were governed by a bunch of psychopathic brains in jars. Oops. Yo, that's clearly a commentary on how politics has devolved into show business, because literally an idol is running for election. Psychopath just takes these little hints, this little passing shots at things that are happening in our world, which I think is what Carole & Tuesday was trying to do, but horribly failed at because they didn't commit to it enough. But Psychopath seems to be pulling it off so far. Like even this, whenever they have one of these like reenactment scenarios, I think it's supposed to look like visually cool or whatever, but it's little more than like a green screened out filter or texture that they put on top of the video and then just black and white it. If you look at something like Blade of the Immortal this season, they've taken this like visual coolness to a new level. They just drop in like different black and white frames in between with like a bunch of kanji everywhere. They have like color, like different visual tricks that they do. They just do a bunch of cool stuff. If you watch that video, you can see all the stuff that they do there. But this just seems like a shortcut to try to differentiate the empath type scenes from the normal ones. And I don't think it's a very effective one because it kind of just looks normal. Like we don't really see anything weird happening. And even like the fox face demon that he encounters, we know that there's a danger there, but he always just shows up directly in front of his face. So we know he's going to be there every time that we look. If he just showed up around the corner, then it would be something more surprising. Like we'd be like, oh, why are you here now? Like if he only showed up some of the time, it would be less scary. Think of like how Leonardo DiCaprio sees his ex-wife in his dreams in Inception. She just shows up and messes up everything that he's trying to do. She's not just there all the time. She's there at the worst possible time, which is how I think they should have used the fox-faced demon, but in the end it kind of just stands for like someone who's always there, but you don't know who they are. And the visuals in this show is really the only reason that you can criticize it. I think the story is just perfectly done to me. Now, that was the first arc. The second arc may be something else, but so far things are pretty good. So it seems like the first arc was like 3 episodes long. We're into the 4th episode equivalent, even though they're double length. They seem to be mostly just episode length stories grouped up into double length. Because it seemed like the first one I thought kind of flowed well together, but this one so far isn't flowing as well, and the visuals just make it sometimes kind of hard to watch, especially when the backgrounds are so distractingly bad that it's kind of hard to pay attention. But don't worry, I'm still gonna watch the show.
ともかくヘラクレスは昔のリングネームで都知事の有力候補者だ。
So we have an ex-pro wrestler and an idol running for governor. I see you, Psychopath. I see what you're trying to do here.
新しい試合は選手と観客の色相を同時にクリアにするってな。
This is the most interesting part of this season for me. The first season was very focused. It was a very linear story through a particular flaw in the Sybil system, and we saw how inspectors and a criminal interacted in order to be able to like fulfill that gap and reveal the true nature of the system. I think it works as an origin story, but I don't think it's the ideal way to explore the world of the Sybil system. That's what we're seeing in Psychopath Season 3. Now, other problems aside, with this show in particular, the way that they're choosing to like flesh out the world and like explain how the Hue system works in places where we haven't seen it before, I think that's the most interesting part. So we see all like there's a Sybil evaluation which tells you what you should be doing. We saw how like politicians and rich people like retreat to these Hue clearing kind of resorts and spas. That's really cool because it kind of explains the point that people who are rich can't afford to have their hues kind of whitewashed, whereas people who can't afford that kind of get stuck with the latent criminality that builds up over time in everyone. The system is flawed in that sense, and I like it that it is flawed because this whole season seems to be about like the system itself is kind of rigged, and how do you fix that in a place where you can only arrest people based on their hues or their immediate psychological state, whereas some kind of long-term like intention to scam or defraud people, how would you ever catch someone like that? And now we see that how sports work in the system. It's like competition in general is bad for you, but in a game where like professionals are playing, and if you watch, you kind of get the catharsis of like winning or losing and everything, and they explain how that works in the civil system. To me, that's the most attractive part of this season. Let's see how they flesh that out going forward in future episodes, because world building is an art in and of itself, and people who do it well, you can't replace good world building with anything else. This politician, aka ex-wrestler, just comes out and cuts a promo on the crowd. Psychopaths, you're getting really kind of tongue-in-cheek with your references here, buddy.
ね、ストーカー。
それ褒めてるんでしょうか？
Ooh, that's that feminism I like to see. He compliments her based on her looks. She hits him with a jab. I see you, girl. Okay, continuing. Whew. Okay, so that was Psycho-Pass episode 2. These seem to be double length, which makes them that much harder to like watch all in one go and like pay attention the whole time, because they're almost an hour long. It's like watching 2 episodes back to back. Now, I feel like my thoughts on this series are pretty well known. Psycho-Pass Season 1 was probably one of my favorite anime of all time. Season 2 was kind of a disaster. We all know what happened there. Season 3 seems to be their determined, like, comeback to kind of change the minds of everybody who wrote them off after Season 2. And so far, it's working for me because they're focusing specifically on the gray areas that they didn't touch on in the first and second seasons. Primarily, white-collar crime, kind of rich criminals who don't have to deal with kind of the pitfalls that exist for people who are not so wealthy. Like, they can get their hues scrubbed clean. They have advantages in other ways, like being able to move their money around or have murders be conducted in ways that would look like accidents. This happens a lot in the real world too, where people who commit violent crimes are generally the ones who get punished the most, despite those being the ones that maybe do the least harm of all crime. If you just punch one person in the face and go to jail for 6 months or whatever, you only hurt one person. If you defrauded like Bernie Madoff, he's in jail, but he's in minimum security and he's probably doing fine. He probably cost thousands of lives because people kill themselves when they don't have money. So it's really cool that it's choosing to look at this. It's an interesting side to crime that we don't really think about that much. When you think crime, you think people stabbing each other with knives or shooting each other with guns over drug deals gone wrong or whatever you choose to think about. But this is kind of the real aspect of crime, like the majority of crime that hurts a lot of people and causes a lot of economic and real personal damage is white-collar crime. And they even included a reference to the 2008 financial crisis in this episode. Who saw that coming? Not me. So just watch this episode instead of watching The Big Short, because it kind of explains the same thing in not so many words. All in all, a good show, I would say. I don't really see where it's going. It's building up a lot of stuff. There's a lot of foreshadowing to things that haven't quite happened yet. There's the fox-faced demon man. There's those people who sit in the high tower and talk about like dealing and congressmen and stuff like that, which we don't really know how that's going to turn out. And it's just one of those weird things where it'll sort itself out over time, but we kind of have to just watch to learn exactly what's going on. But Psycho-Pass, definitely a good comeback from this show, because I watched a little bit of one of the first movies that came out this year, and I wasn't overly impressed. I wasn't impressed with the old movie that they made either, but this seems to be a solid return to the stuff that made Psycho-Pass good in the first place. Psycho-Pass, what a show, The visuals are not good, but hey, that's never mattered to me before. If the story's engaging enough, I'll watch anything. So, Psycho-Pass, Season 3, Episode 2, a great return to form for the series in general. But that's it for me for this week. I'll see you next week with this super long episodes that they keep putting out. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next episode.